Pokemon has always been an interesting game franchise. It's had all varieties of spin-offs, from a 2D racing game to a 3-match game and a fighting game to a photographic capture game, and there's even a MOBA game incoming. However, the one-of-a-kind game that I'm surprised hasn't ever been made on phones by now is finally getting a new release on the Switch. This particular game hasn't seen the light of day since the N64, and no, I'm not talking about Hey You Pikachu. It's time to whip out your cameras and prepare to throw gas balls at innocent wildlife as I review Pokemon Snap for the Nintendo 64. Most of you probably already know what the game's all about, but for the two of you out there, it's an on-rails affair where you're taking pictures. Well, that sounds very casual, and it sort of is. It's more involved than that. It can best be described as child's first photography, as Professor Oak will determine the worth of each picture. Only one photo will be recognized of each Pokemon at a time, with the option to replace them if you get a higher scoring one. As one would expect, getting a nice close-up centered shot is what you'll want to do to get the most out of it. You have until you get to the exit or you burn through all 60 shots your film provides you to take as many pictures as you can, after which the level is over. It's also worth noting that you have the opportunity to take snapshots of Pokemon in special poses, such as a couple of Pidgeys punishing a Meowth by whirlwinding it. Of course, you aren't just a passive observer, leaving it up to the Pokemon to always get the right opportunity shot for you. This is a video game after all, so you gain some abilities over time. Pokemon food is basically an apple that you can throw around. Typically, Pokemon will be happy to eat it. Some others might be awakened or even be alerted by it if you throw it at them. You can, of course, also use it as breadcrumbs to lure Pokemon to where you want them to be, such as a Pikachu to a surfboard. The next one actually has some interesting implications, the Pester Ball. It's essentially a gas bomb, which probably sounds familiar to some of you. It can shock awake, knock out, and generally pester Pokemon to get certain poses or coax Pokemon to the right places. Pokeflute is mainly for getting a Pokemon to dance. That may not seem as dynamic and interesting as the other ones, but those special poses are always critical for getting as many points as you possibly can from Oak. Finally, the dash engine seems even less impressive, as it just makes you move faster. Despite what you may think, it's not just there to rush you through the stage quicker. Seeing as how special poses are everything, being able to rush to a spot to get Pokemon at just the right time can be critical for maximizing your point potential. You aren't just getting points for the sake of points either, as you need to meet certain point quotas to get to the next stage, as well as to unlock new items. Naturally, you'll also want to revisit previous stages once you get the items to get more opportunities to get extra shots, or to replace shots with ones that will net you a higher score. There's a grand total of 63 unique species of Pokemon in the game to take pictures of. Supposedly Ekans was going to be included, but was sadly cut, meaning the likely intended reference of 64 was broken. Instead, since there are 6 signs based on Pokemon that don't appear in actuality, the number of represented critters is technically 69. You can go ahead and take from that as you will. You'll also have a total of 7 courses to go through. You've got the beach, tunnels, volcano, river, cave, valley, and of course the bonus Rainbow Road. The volcano and cave are actually secret levels you have to uncover with getting the right Pokemon to do the right things to reveal them. There's an additional secret in the valley to reach a secret area of Oaks, wherein you must take pictures of the 6 Pokemon signs throughout the levels. Doing so unlocks the bonus Rainbow Road, but since Project 64 wouldn't properly snap the signs, I had to cheat to unlock it. Either way, it's in this bonus stage that you get the opportunity to pursue a picture of the elusive legendary Pokemon. Contrary to the original games of Pokemon Stadium, this penultimate creature isn't Mewtwo, although he is one of the signs, but the original ancestral Pokemon, Mew itself. Naturally, Mew isn't so easy to take a picture of, as it zips by in a bubble that makes pictures impossible to take. Instead, you have to pelt it as it comes by, so its bubble bursts. Although apparently not really, because it'll soon be seen chasing after the bubble, which is your opportunity to stun it. If you can manage to get a hit on it, it'll start spinning in a daze and getting close to you. That's your golden opportunity to get a good snap of it. On the subject of legendary Pokemon, you also get the opportunity to snap the 3 legendary birds in the tunnel, volcano, and cave respectively. The game shows this off by actually making Moltres mandatory, since it blocks your path. All in all, Pokemon Snap is a deceptively simplistic looking game with a surprising amount of depth locked behind it. Obviously being targeted at kids, Nintendo doesn't go crazy and incorporate things like depth of field or motion blur or such things. The N64 probably wasn't very capable of representing such things anyway. Still, there's a good amount of depth in determining by yourself, or just looking it up, the right time to use your items and camera effectively to get the best possible shot to maximize your point score. Even after you beat all the levels and snap Mew, there's still plenty left to do if you want to go for the arcade high score kind of thing. The game is fairly generous in not requiring that many for their mandatory point quotas, but that doesn't mean you can't self-impose a challenge if you really want to. I haven't seen much of the new upcoming Switch version so far, but I trust it will at least up the ante with the amount of Pokemon you can snap and maybe some more items and challenge modes. Hopefully, unlike Sword and Shield, this one won't feel skimped out on in terms of actual content. At least the N64 version isn't like that. It manages to feel very complete despite only having half of the Pokédex at the time. There really isn't much here in terms of story, as well there shouldn't be since it's a casual photography game. Basically, Professor Oak hires the photographer from the anime, Todd Snap, to take photos of various Pokemon for a report of his. Utilizing the Zero One, which is a vehicle designed by Oak to take you through each area to its exit portal and presumably protect you from Pokemon, Todd must snap pictures of the Pokemon throughout each area. The reason I say this is because the game doesn't actually address it, but there are certain moments, such as when a Charizard shoots a flamethrower at you, that you should be in serious trouble, but you aren't. As he eventually makes his way to Oak's secret cabin, he determines that there are Pokemon signs that contain information leading to very special Pokemon. Naturally, upon taking all 6 shots, Oak uses it to find a new path up in the clouds called Rainbow Road. It's here that the aforementioned Mew can be found and snapped, assuming you can get it out of its shell. While I hadn't done it personally in my Let's Play, getting every single one of the 63 Pokemon on film has Oak acknowledge your efforts and the credits roll. And with that, the Pokemon report is finally complete. What did you really expect from a casual photography game? It's definitely not a full-on JRPG we're dealing with here, and Pokemon has always been deliberately simple to follow, even in its main games. Like many games of old with simplistic stories like old-school first-person shooters, it's just used as context for the gameplay and it really stays out of the way. There's really nothing else that needs to be said unless you want to delve into the personal stories of the Pokemon in each area, like Ditto impersonating Bulbasaur. It works well for what it does, and it certainly isn't intrusive. Graphically, it actually looks quite good for its time. The Pokemon themselves look like they were imported from Pokemon Stadium, which kinda makes sense. It's a shame there weren't more than 63 Pokemon in the game, but you know how animations are. Unlike Sword and Shield, Snap actually looks like it has a lot of unique animations for each Pokemon. As it would kind of have to, since you'll be seeing Pokemon making all kinds of special poses. You'll see things like a Meowth chasing after a Pidgey, a Pikachu riding on a surfboard, and an Electabuzz chasing a rolling Electrode. How some Pokemon evolve is also pretty interesting, like knocking a Charmeleon into the mouth of a volcano only for a Charizard to pop out and flamethrower you. This can best be seen with Meowth. There are also Pokemon expressions that make them seem more lively. You'll really see Pokemon get upset if you use Pester Balls directly on them, and some Pokemon will get elated when you offer them Pokemon food. The environments, as you may expect, are very low res and low poly being on the N64, but there's a decent enough variety of them. The beach, amazingly enough, starts out on a beach. It zooms around a bit of grassland, but the main theme is obviously the adjacent ocean even after it gets past the initial sandy beach area. Interestingly enough, Tunnel seems to be themed after a power plant, makes me think of the power plant from the Pokemon games, which is fitting since Zapdos also appears in it. Volcano is, as you may expect, themed around volcanic ash and lava with fire Pokemon everywhere. Likewise, the river has you going downstream, which is populated with various grass and water Pokemon. The cave, as you would expect, has Zubats in it, but it also has Ditto disguised as Bulbasaur, as well as Jinxes who can awaken Articuno. The valley actually has a pretty decent amount of variety of Pokemon in it. You'll find Mankeys, Geodudes, Sandshrews, Staryus, Squirtle, and even Dragonite. Rainbow Road isn't nearly as inventive, but the rainbow streaked clouds below you and the stars above you with the various signs popping around are a nice visual touch. I'm sure if it wasn't for N64 limitations, these clouds could look a lot more volumetric and interesting. Maybe we'll see a recreation in the upcoming Switch game. The Pokemon signs are also pretty diverse in appearance. You've got a rock Kingler structure, the shadow of a pincer, gas shaped like a coughing, a Mewtwo light pattern, and a cliffside Dugtrio. The music is likewise pretty varied. The calm music of the beach contrasts against the more tribal style of the volcano or the prairie style of the valley. The Pokeflute, of course, has its own music as well, as do the Pokemon Report album, Oak's Lab, and Grading, and even a jingle if you run out of film. Combine that with the Pokemon cries, mostly based on the long-standing anime and other such sound effects, and the game is dripping with personality. From a presentation standpoint, they've probably done about as much as you could reasonably expect given the platform it's on. It no doubt looks dated by today's standards. It's only on the first of Nintendo systems to be made with 3D in mind after all, no big deal, but it's no doubt charming nonetheless. The style most certainly compensates very well for a lack of graphical fidelity, and here's hoping the Switch game will be able to keep that pleasing aesthetic while adding plenty of newfound fidelity. I like what I see so far, but the jury's still out on that one, so we'll have to wait and see. Graphically and audibly, Pokemon Snap is very pleasing, assuming you go in with the context that this is from the N64 era. Pokemon Snap is obviously not for everybody, especially those expecting a more hardcore experience. Frankly, if you're looking for that and a casual spin-off of a very casual JRPG franchise, you're about as far off base as it possibly gets. What you can expect is a pretty laid-back game where the goal is to simply get the best photograph you can. It can get surprisingly strategic and even guide-dang at times where you try to figure out what's the best way to get a certain shot of certain Pokemon, and getting enough points and shots to progress isn't effortless either. The use of items actually elevates it a bit from simply passively taking pictures to actively trying to set up the best shots and making certain Pokemon appear for you at all. You really have to go into an arc to get that Pokefood and Pester Balls to go exactly where you want them to. It can be a pretty addictive and enjoyable experience if you let yourself settle into it, even if the actual game can be beaten fairly quickly. Here's hoping the Nintendo Switch Pokemon Snap packs are full of content and can live up to all the charm and addictive fun that this one has. This has been my review of Pokemon Snap. Now, if you excuse me, a Pikachu is riding on an Electrode and I have to get all over that. Paparazzi for life, baby.